Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one's entitled Planet X Cataclysm Imminent, Safe Zones Worldwide. Now, Planet X has been affecting planet Earth for a long time, but its effects have accelerated to such a point that it would be prudent to assume that a truly cataclysmic event is imminent. The Planet X effects are numerous, and all of them, when increased by several orders of magnitude, can be extremely destructive and thus lead to the destruction of large sections of the Earth's surface, as well as to the death of large numbers of the world's population. One such event, which could very well be unleashed at any moment now, which would result from the Earth being approached by a large Planet X system stellar core, 4 times the size of the Earth or larger, could destroy most of the Earth's cities and their population with them. These large stellar cores are the cores of dead stars, while smaller ones are the core of planets or moons. The approach of such large objects to Earth could result in volcanoes, at least on the side of the Earth, or even all volcanoes on the side of the Earth closest to the object erupting, and all fault zones on the same side going into earthquake event mode. An even larger object may cause the whole surface of the Earth to suffer the same fate. And you may look at Article 656 entitled Planet X Increasing Points to an Approaching Cataclysmic Event. And this diagram illustrates what occurs. A volcanic eruption is like a CME on the Sun, and is induced by a stellar core, which was once the core of a planet or a star, as I said. And it's usually the large ones, 4 times larger than the Earth or larger, will induce these matter creation events from the core of the Earth, which results in the ejection of plasma, in other words, magma, and results in a volcanic eruption. And this is not to scale, because here I show a very small object. It's usually much larger objects that would cause a volcanic eruption. Now, the Earth has over 1,500 volcanoes, most of which are dormant, but which once formed due to the approach of a large stellar core to Earth, and will thus provide a way for the magma exploding from the Earth's core in response to the approach of a truly large stellar core escaping to the surface. When no clear way is available to the surface, then the result is an earthquake. So this is illustrated here. So this large stellar core somewhere above a point on the surface of the Earth, and the center of the object, even if it's larger than the Earth, it will be the alignment between the Earth's core and the center of the object that would locate where this earthquake would be. So this would be here. So the Earth's core would react to the presence of this object and start creating matter, starts ejecting magma, and the magma rises up through whatever channels are available. And if there is no volcano, so there's no pathway all the way to the surface, it will move as far up as possible, and it will explode. It will cause an explosion underground at the point it can no longer go any further. And that's what we call an earthquake. And here you see some of these objects. Here's this one. This is one of the smaller ones that go to the Sun. They are about 4 times larger than the Earth. And these are the cores of stars. The ones that come to Earth are usually much smaller, but with the Sun in its weakened state, we're getting larger and larger ones coming to the Earth. And this is one of those that have reached the Earth, have entered the Earth's atmosphere. You can see it here, covered in its cloud envelope. So this is a small one, most likely a moon core. Some of them are about 250 feet in diameter. But there are other effects which must be considered, such as the possibility of tsunamis, tidal surges, which are slower to roll in, but can be just as devastating because it results in large regions remaining flooded for up to several days. This is because a tidal surge is the result of the tidal effect of an object in space that has closely approached the Earth. In addition, these are usually accompanied by cyclonic winds due to a gravitational vortex which forms between the object and the surface of the Earth. The winds can be extremely destructive. The objects are energy depleted and will thus be attracted to regions of the Earth where energy from the Earth's core is closer to the surface or more accessible. In other words, to regions very close to volcanoes. So in the search for safe zones, we need to first of all remain as far as possible from volcanoes. Secondly, we should avoid fault zones or rift valleys, and we should also avoid the coastlines due to the possibility of tsunamis. And here we see an illustration of what a huge tsunami wave heading for a coastal town would look like. And here we see the aftermath of the Japanese tsunami on from March 11, 2011. And as you can see, it caused this huge devastation. As you can see, there's a ship there because it was brought in by the tsunami waves. So just imagine what would happen if earthquakes even stronger than the one which occurred on March 11, 2011, were to occur at thousands of locations around the globe at once. The coastlines would be devastated worldwide, and most coastal cities would cease to exist. The gravitational interaction between large Planet X objects and the Earth also leads to mountains collapsing, landslides, fissures, and the creation of sinkholes. So it is important to stay away from cliffs, both from the top and the bottom of a cliff, as collapse can be just as devastating to anyone at either point. And here you see a landslide which occurred in Tennessee on the 21st of February 2019. So you can see the whole road collapsed because the side of the mountain just slid away. And here's the same thing. This is from India from July of 2018. As you can see, it blocked the road and it destroyed, or at least partially destroyed, this house here. Thus, the safest zones will be on plateaus, but as far as possible from volcanoes. Plateaus are high elevation plains. The high elevation prevents tsunamis and tidal surges from being a problem. Living on ground which is made of solid rock, usually igneous or volcanic in nature, is also important. So the safest locations would be volcanic plateaus, as long as we are not too close to a volcano. There are several large plateaus around the world which we can consider. In the United States, there is the Colorado Plateau, which is, however, too close to the Yellowstone supervolcano, which is showing signs of activity and may erupt at any moment, and the many other volcanoes in the western U.S. And here you see where the volcanoes occur in North America, all along the western coast. And the Colorado Plateau is here, so it's not that far from these volcanoes, and that's the problem. And Yellowstone's up here. So this is a map of it. It's not completely safe, but if the volcanoes don't erupt, if all you get is a big shaking, then it might be a good place to be. And it's important to, of course, in the U.S. to avoid the New Madrid seismic zone. That is extremely dangerous area. The ground is not very solid. And so if there is a shaking worldwide, that region will be devastated. So the safest region when the whole planet shakes, as I said, would be the Colorado Plateau. But if the volcanoes erupt, then it's no longer safe. Now, in South America, there are several plateaus. The Atacama in northeastern Argentina and Chile, and also the Altiplano, which is mainly in Bolivia, with its northern parts in Peru. Both of these are not suitable because their elevations are too high, 4,000 meters for the Atacama and 3,750 meters for the Altiplano. So that's over 10,000 feet. And both are too close to volcanoes, with the Altiplano having several active volcanoes within it. It is very difficult to live at such high altitudes because there is much less oxygen to breathe. It is best to not go any higher than 2,000 meters, but certainly above 1,000 meters, 3,000 feet, is much safer. The best plateau in South America is the one that is mostly in Venezuela and is called the Guiana Shield. Shields most likely formed as a result of a slow upswelling of magma resulting from slow sustained plasma ejections or matter creation rather than fast and explosive, which leads to the formation of volcanoes. Softer rock occurs in between the volcanic rock, which erodes away, forming deep valleys. The shield has a maximum elevation of only 900 meters on the Venezuelan side, which is not ideal, but the fact that it is a seismic stable region is a big plus. The region extends to Guyana and northern Brazil. You can see a map of it here. There's Brazil here, northern Brazil. So the highest elevation region is in Venezuela here. And so this would be the safest place to be in South America. The other ones are too close to these volcanoes here. This is the Atacama is here, and the other one, the Altiplano, is up here. But there are too many volcanoes, and their elevation is just too high. Now here we have a photograph of the Guiana Shield region in Venezuela, where the volcanic rock can be seen rising above this river valley here. And the largest plateau on Earth is in China. It's called the Tibetan Plateau, but with a typical elevation of 3,000 meters or 10,000 feet, it is too high to be a comfortable place to live. But there may be areas to the south which will most likely remain stable as they are further from the few volcanoes in the region. And you can see the volcanoes in that region. There are 4 here, and they're quite far apart. And the lowest plateau to the east of the Tibetan Plateau, so the Tibetan Plateau is here, and the lowest is here somewhere. It's actually quite close to those 2 volcanoes. So the western side would be better than the eastern side. So the lowest plateau to the east of the Tibetan Plateau would be a much better and almost ideal location. It has an elevation of 1,200 meters or 4,000 feet. So here you can see the volcanoes in Asia, and there are very few here on this side. But I don't think this has a very high elevation. It's a bit close to the coastline. I think there are plains here, but as I said, the elevation not that high. The lowest plateau here would, I think, be a better location. And so this shows the Tibetan Plateau and the lowest plateau. And so as I said, south here maybe there may be some safe regions if the elevation is not too high. Otherwise, it's just too high to be comfortable. And here's somewhere the lowest. And here you can see the volcanoes in Europe, and there are several plateau regions in Europe which may be suitable, but it is important to stay away from the volcanoes. As you can see, there are lots of volcanoes in Italy and Greece. Turkey here has quite a few. And there are 2 here in Germany, 1 in France, 1 in northern Spain. So the valleys in Switzerland, and they know Switzerland. They know Switzerland's here somewhere. So there are no volcanoes there, and there are very high mountains there, and so they may protect you from, of course, if the mountains collapse, that may be a problem, but if you find a high elevation that is still comfortable to live, it might be a good place to be. And so higher elevations in Spain and Portugal may also be suitable. In the UK, the best place to survive would be where the elevation is highest, although being on an island is far from ideal. There may be suitable places in Scotland, but the cold weather may be a problem. However, Europe seems to be heading toward global conflict, which will most likely result in the region being devastated by nuclear weapons. And then the survivors will most likely have to locate elsewhere to survive. And here you see this is Russia, and Russia has very few volcanoes. There's basically one here. And it does have a plateau called the Central Siberian Plateau. Here it is. It's closer to the east coast than the western part. The only problem is that it will be very, very cold in winter, but it may be a good place to survive the big shaking that may occur and volcanic eruptions, because there are no volcanoes anywhere near it. There are no long-term survival zones in Australia because the interior is a desert and extremely hot. The coastlines are subject to tsunamis and tidal surges, and in addition, the western side of Australia has a large number of volcanoes. But if a region of reasonable high elevation can be found not far from the coast, this would be the best option. And here you can see the large number of volcanoes on the western side of Australia. So Sydney is not an ideal place to be. It's also too close to the coast. So tsunamis will be a problem. So this, basically the whole of the interior of Australia is extremely hot, and it's basically a desert. There is this city here called Adelaide, which is at the south, on the south of the continent. And so that's the cooler part of Australia. And there are certain regions of high elevation close to the coast. So living there may be the safest place to be in Australia. A high elevation, not too far from the coast, may be the best place, and I think that will be it. Now, one of the best survival places is actually in South Africa, since a large part of South Africa is on a plateau with an elevation of over 1,500 meters, and there are no volcanoes anywhere near it. This is an ideal Planet X survival region. The city of Johannesburg has an elevation of 1,753 meters or 5,750 feet and an ideal climate. The ground is hard, igneous rock, and there are no volcanoes. The problem with this location is the corrupt government and extremely high crime rate. And here you can see a map where we can see where all the volcanoes in Africa are. As you can see, Southern Africa has no volcanoes. And this is the Central Plateau, this is South Africa. So this whole region has high elevation, it's flat, it's stable, no volcanoes, seismically stable. So this would be an ideal place to survive any Planet X cataclysm. And the escarpment is at the edge of this plateau, and where the elevation drops very quickly to the coastal lowlands, which you can see here. And this escarpment runs along the western coast all the way to Angola. And this is Namibia here. You can see it in this political map. Angola's up there, so it goes all the way along the coast to Angola. And on the eastern side, it goes all the way to Zambia, which is up there in red. So it goes up here through Zimbabwe to Zambia. Mozambique, unfortunately, is in the lowlands, so it may be subject to tsunamis. And that's where I was born. And so here's a map of South Africa. You can see Johannesburg's the largest city. Pretoria is the capital. And this region has very dense, very hard igneous rock. So it's very similar to the Shield region in Venezuela, and it's seismically stable. So the central plateau most likely formed due to slow matter creation from the Earth's core, causing a slow upswelling from deep within the Earth. All rock is formed by the Earth's core, but some are denser than others. The so-called volcanic rock are denser, which makes the ground composed of this type of rock more stable and makes the possibility of magma being ejected through it to the surface unlikely. So in conclusion, plateaus, when there are no volcanoes nearby, are the safest place to be for surviving a Planet X cataclysm. But ultimately, only the creator of the universe can provide anybody with a truly safe place, as only he has the ability to truly save any one of us. And these are the references. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.